This is INCRadio, DCEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ, or Iglesianicristo.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to INC Radio Florida. I am one of your hosts this morning, Brother Robert Tapalis, coming to you from here in Tampa, Florida, here on the southwest portion of the state. And of course, today is another very typical, almost summer day, I would say. It's about 75 degrees this morning, but it's going to very quickly shoot up to 91 today. And of course, today is just April 5th. It's not even fully summer yet. So it's about 9:30 in the morning here on the East Coast of the United States, which means it's pretty late there in the Philippines. And we'd love to greet everyone that joined us and stayed up late, because today we're going to be talking about a topic we hope you're all hearing, but really we want you to be listening. So I'm going to toss it over to Sister Audrey, who's going to help us greet all of our international viewers. Good morning, Sister Audrey. Is it as hot over there where you're sitting as it is here?
Yes, it is. It is very warm today. If you haven't felt summer in Florida yet, it's definitely come. So welcome into the heat of summer. But of course, welcome to our sunshine state of mind for our show this morning here on INC Radio Florida. This is Sister Audrey Tapalis coming to you from Tampa. Of course, we know that this is an international show. So from wherever you are, we would love to hear where you're from. Say hi, drop down in the comments and interact with us during the show. Of course, we want to say hello, good evening, bon dia, hello, ciao. Other greetings to be continued. But stay tuned, because we've got a very beautiful topic today that I think most of you would find interesting tuning in for. So I'm going to toss it over to Sister Joy over there in the central portion of Florida. Hi, Sister Joy.
Good morning, and thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Sister Audrey. You know, I am in the central part of our sunny state here, sunshine of Florida. And I have to say, we started off with being sunny side up. What do you think? It's nice and sunny. It's a 75-degree start here in the central part, which is Orlando. So thank you all for joining us. We are so excited to hear from all of you. So please make sure that you also comment in our YouTube chat. Let us know where you're from, what the weather is like, because we certainly do have a lovely show where we're going to discuss some really, really important topics. I know that we talk a lot about all things Florida, but this is really, I think, a topic that's definitely worth, not just for today's discussion, right, where we're going to break down the difference between hearing things and listening. And if you just heard that, right, there is a difference between hearing and listening. So this is definitely noteworthy, and we're excited to dive in. So Brother Robert, I'm going to toss it back to you. So let's go ahead and discuss.
All right. Yeah, I know. We actually we're super interested about this topic, because so many people tend to interchange the terms, right? They throw the terms hearing and listening and kind of throw them into the same bucket, which is really unfair, because it is such a difference, a vast difference between the two. And, you know, when we talk about what is hearing versus what is listening, what a lot of people don't understand is that one of them, which is hearing, is really it's a physiological act. It's just being able to hear sound, and it happens automatically. And most importantly, it requires no effort. I mean, you're kind of hearing passively, right? You're hearing simply because you're not deaf. So, you know, that's one of the ways that you can try to associate that. Whereas with listening, it's a very different skill, because it's something where you're actually making a conscious effort to understand and basically interpret what's being said by the other person. And there's a big difference, because you can hear and not be paying attention. Right?
Absolutely.
We do that all the time.
That's just a huge, that's enormous. That's a tremendous difference.
Right? Because I mean, how many times do people like listen or hear music in the background? They call it listening, but what they do is that they're just playing music in the background, or they have the TV on while they're trying to study, because they just need sort of that what they call white noise in the background, which means that you can actually be hearing things and not be paying attention to them. What listening is really focusing on what it is that the person is saying it's engaging them. And we're going to talk about that here. And we're going to talk and give you some tips on what it is that you can do to be a better listener. And in some cases, and in many cases, it's about giving empathy and expressing empathy for them. Because if a person is talking to you, and if you've followed us, we always talk about doing things to help build deeper relationships with one another in the family, professionally, personally. And this is really one of the biggest ways that you could start to really establish those deeper relationships is by really focusing on and perfecting what we call the art of listening. Because when you talk about listening isn't the act of simply hearing the words that are spoken. It's the art of understanding the meaning behind those words. And it's important to understand that distinction because, the act of something, it's just doing it, right? It's just sitting there and hearing words come in. That's not really what listening is. Listening is really getting to the point where you're understanding what is being said behind those words. And how do we do that? And why is it so important for us to be able to listen? What's so important about listening? Why does it matter? Well, one, we already established is going to help to improve relationships and help to reduce misunderstanding. Many misunderstandings happen simply because not everything was able to be expressed by the other party, right? They feel like they weren't heard, right? Versus we feel like we heard everything you had to say, but we didn't really process it. So that leads often to misunderstandings. It's helpful, especially both in personal and professional communication. So you want to be sure that the art or the skill that you're developing is something you carry over into all of these different aspects of your life. And then it most importantly helps to build trust and deeper connections. What we found is that if people feel that they've been truly heard, meaning that their ideas are understood and they're able to get them expressed in a way that they feel that they've gotten everything out, that it really helps to build better trust between the two parties and more importantly, a deeper connection with them because with trust comes those deeper connections, right? I mean, I'm sure that this is something you guys both, Sister Joy, Sister Audrey, you guys are both married, right? For a variety of times. Sister Joy, you guys have been married for 17 years, I think, right? And then Sister Audrey, a couple years. 19. I'm going to get your anniversary right one of these days. I started off, I think, a couple of weeks ago by saying,
just get your anniversary right. We're good, right?
Yeah. You're married, right? You are married. So for 19 years, you guys have been married, and Sister Audrey, you've been married now for a couple of years, 2 years, right? And going towards now, and with a third party in your family. When you talk about the differences in listening and having these conversations with Brother RJ in your early parts of your relationship, where did you feel that it was important for the listening to be sort of the whole centerpiece of a conversation versus just kind of sitting there and regurgitating words or getting the words out? I mean, how important is that early on in a relationship?
Not to Joy, you want to go first?
I'll let you go first because this is interesting because I might be able to relate to these earlier years.
I may be setting Brother RJ up for a very long afternoon, but
Well, I mean, so we've been together for going on 6 years. So the barrier of long distance, those phone calls before FaceTime even became a thing, those phone calls needed to be quality listening. Just because that's all you were doing, and there was no affirmation of whether or not, like, you could see the facial expressions, you can kind of see the reactions to things that you were saying to reassure that the other party was listening. So I think now that we can't just hang up the phone, uh going on
it's a little
almost
more
3 years
difficult.
now. Yeah, yeah. So now you see everything in totality. I think that's some we've thankfully progressed in that skill of listening to each other, and truly understanding each other. We're still working on our mind reading. I still firmly believe that it's possible eventually.
Do we really have to be able to read minds? Do husbands really have to be able to read minds?
It's essential. Yes.
It's foresight. it's not reading minds. There's another word for it. It's foresight. And then understanding how your significant other might react to things, i.e., mind reading.
Well, but that comes from experience, right?
Mhm.
Foresight is something I always say. What is that I tell the kids? I always tell them that. Well, and this is kind of a different analogy, but it's like good decisions typically come from bad decisions, and bad decisions typically come from experience, right?
Mm.
So it's the same thing. Foresight is something that's developed only after you've experienced things. So I think the whole premise is that you go through this exercise of communicating and having these experiences, and hopefully
Hope.
um, we learn from these experiences. So this way, in the future, we're able to kind of predict when we're saying something that we know is going to get us in trouble. But it's a matter of learning from those experiences and communicating. And I think to your point, though, it's uh, you were talking about a long distance relationship and communicating via phone, for example, before FaceTime. It's really more difficult, I think, at that point to be able to express um, that feeling of that person being heard because they can't see, like you said, your facial
Mhm.
expressions. They can't see that they're focused. All you're hearing is dead air
Mhm.
on the other side. So, what are some tips about trying to have a meaningful listening conversation when you're doing it via telephone, or is it,
Yeah.
you know,
It's almost you want to listen carefully for those pauses or those breaks. So the technicality is like listening for like the end of a sentence or the dot dot dot, right? So like I'm expecting you for a response, right? so it's hearing for those cues and then taking those opportunities to either repeat back, and I believe we'll be touching on this in a little bit, but it's repeating back or paraphrasing what was just said, or just so that when when you're letting everything out of your box, you're hearing back not necessarily what you want to hear, but it's cute, like cute starting out the sentence with just so I understand, or just so
Good one.
I get where you're coming from. This. That was a skill I actually learned from RJ, because I was not very good at listening. What is it that we're like? It was really hard for me to turn off the problem solving part. I think most males have this bone. Somehow I've also inherited this, but it's like once you tell me your issue, your problem, I have a hard time not going straight to A, B, and C. Therefore, A, B, A, C, and this is how it's going to be solved. Here you go, run with it. So
before they've even gotten an opportunity to get everything out, right? Because
yeah.
that's a pitfall. It's a pitfall, and it's not out of, it doesn't come out of anything like it comes out of a good place
Mhm.
because you want to help them. You genuinely want to help them, but oftentimes you wanting to help them really is doing the opposite of that, because the whole point was that they were just trying to get everything out, right? They wanted to, and we're going to talk about this term, they want to empty the bucket, and they weren't able to do that because we kept interrupting, because we wanted to fix the problem before we even knew what the problem really was, because they haven't even gotten there yet, right? So and thank you for that, because I think that's going to be a great segue into this next piece. But so, Sister Joy, with you and Brother Billy, um, you had obviously a lot more time interacting, and then with having the children around, especially as they grow older, being able to have these meaningful conversations. What are some of the things that you guys have had to do to be able to have kind of these meaningful conversations and do them in a way that really allows you to express yourself without the distractions of all the kids? Are there some techniques that you guys do, like lock yourself in a room, go off someplace else to have the conversation rather than try to hold it in the kitchen? What are some of the things you guys do to try to be sure that you can have that opportunity?
I think it's just a constant, it's it's a constant thing that you do have to work at. We discussed earlier, it's an active, this is not something like where you just physically hear the noise. And we're constantly working on this because, life is fun. And, when you mix with children with it gets very interesting. And it does, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge even in our marriage. We've been married almost, we're almost hitting that 20-mile marker, right? And so yeah, trying to tune out everything else that's around it does take work. It's a labor of love for sure, to really make sure that we're listening to each other. And we still you'll hear from him too sometimes. We pass on to each other, okay, this is what needs to get done, this is what needs to happen, and then it gets lost sometimes, with all the other noise. And it's okay, we work through it, right? That's just what it is. And I think you said something that was just so significant earlier as we were going through this, making sure that the other party feels like feeling. Y'all, again, my name is Joy, I'm a feeling, my name is a feeling, right? So making sure that the other party has felt that they feel heard, that they know. And like what you said, not simply parroting, but actually, okay, did I understand that? And I'm now transitioning to this new thing, even with my kids, like, okay, can you repeat back what I just said? And that's
Wow.
yes.
That is such a great tip. That
And-
really is.
Bingo.
And sometimes I'm like, it looks like they're listening. It really does. And then they'll look at me like, oh, wait, can you say it again? I'm like, wait,
Deer
that's
in the
not what I
headlights.
said. So, I mean, it really is. It's a practice. And we're still in the new, just trying this thing out. But, these are, and you hear that I've been married for almost 20 years, but we're still working on this. One thing that, Brother Billy says all the time, he says that listening and silent, if you just jumble the words, the letters, listen and silent is the same letters. Yes, but that doesn't mean that you should be silent and you're not actually active listening, right? But yeah, in order to actively listen, you have to be silent so you can process exactly what is being said, and what are they feeling, what is the other party trying to feel. So yes, it's a constant, it really is an art, because but with practice we make progress, right? So, and that's where
Right.
we are still. So it definitely improves, though, I think, for both parties, as you try and as you are constantly trying to communicate. And I love how you said, Sister Audrey, how, earlier on in your relationship, there was a lot of phone calls, right? So you don't have that, the, the
Face to
facial
face. Yeah, exactly.
during our time, it was more, we had to have the it was more like physical, like we could speak to each other. And what's funny now is that because, the way how our family set up, he's the main provider for our family, we text a lot. So our communication now is based on, with just texting each other back and forth. And, with that, it's also really important to make sure that the message is not lost. Like, are they reading that correctly? Which is, another form of communication, but making sure that that's repeated and like it's heard, right, and listened to.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great opportunity to try to practice how it is that we're expressing our ideas, because when you're texting, you lose all context, right? There's no facial expression, there's no intonation in the voice, there's no change in expression. It's just literally words on a screen, and you have to be able to interpret those, and you're hoping that you're expressing yourself in a way that the other person on the receiving end of that text is interpreting it the way that you meant. Because how many times have you heard, well, what you read isn't what I meant, or what you heard isn't what I meant? Well, then why didn't you say what you meant?
Or that apparently proper grammar is very serious and stern. And
Right.
it's like,
Well, my daughters taught me never use periods in a text message.
Oh, really?
blows my mind. But that's another topic.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Get into
There's
that
a
one.
there's a whole psychology behind it.
Right.
Don't end a sentence in your text message with a period, because
Or
it
several periods, like ellipses, like dot,
yeah,
dot, dot.
exactly, because that's
Me?
they have completely different sort of meanings when they're expressed that way. So let's talk about what are some of the things that we could do to help to try and improve listening. I mean, we've all established that the differences between listening and hearing are extremely important in being able to build that deeper relationship, and we know that it's a skill. So skills need practice, but skills also have to be developed. And here's some tips that we came up with that we think are going to be important. Obviously, first and foremost, if you're going to be engaging in a meaningful conversation with someone, in order for them to feel like they're actually being heard, then there has to be no distractions on your part. Meaning, it's not a meaningful conversation and proof that you're actively listening if you're sitting there scrolling on your phone while they're trying to talk to you, or if you're watching the game on TV while someone is trying to talk to you, or scrolling through social media.
Rude.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. So we'll call it what it is. It's rude. So some of the tips are just remove all the distractions, and if even possible, and we mentioned this in the beginning of the show, is like physically, even though you're not looking at your phone, like physically put your phone away, because if it's within arm's reach, within sight, then that gives that person the impression that you're not going to be fully engaged in the conversation, because a notification pops up, your eyes kind of drift to it, or you hear that ding, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, do I need to get that? So completely remove the distractions, even visually, just get them out of the way. So that way the person that you're talking to will definitely feel as if you're fully present. This is more of that emotional component that we've been talking about, right? Allow the other person to feel that they're heard or understood. And I think we talked about this in an episode a few weeks, maybe a month or so ago, where we said it doesn't matter how you felt that you expressed yourself. All that matters is how does that person on the other end feel, right? I feel like I heard everything you said, but does the person who's saying it feel like that they've been heard or understood? And that's a super complex thing to have to navigate, that husbands have a very difficult time mastering. I will say, only I'm the only husband here, because we are naturally fixers, right? In some cases, Sister Audrey, a fixer, right? So let's not make it male versus female. Let's say that there are some personalities that are just naturally fixers. And if you're naturally a fixer, then that means that in your mind, you're already formulating a response before the person ever even got to finish what they were saying. And if you're so busy in your head trying to formulate a response already, then that means you aren't really listening, right? Because you're distracted. And when they say, well, one of the skills is you have to practice reflective listening, which is like repeating or paraphrasing what you hear. I think paraphrasing is probably better, because repeating, right, is simply parroting, right? And what's a good phrase that you would use if you wanted to get clarity that you understood what someone said?
Oh, this is good.
What's a good phrase that people use? Psychologists use it all the time. Therapists use it all the time.
I understand you, right? And did I
Right?
hear that right? Is this what you're feeling? You just kind of, I think definitely using that word feel.
Right?
Like, is this what you're feeling? Okay.
What about you, Straudry? Like, if you wanted to get someone to clarify what it is that they just said, to be sure that you understood, what would we typically say to them?
For some reason, I want to say, do you know what I'm saying? And then like, what do you think? But I don't know if it's going down that route, or I know that there's got to be specific verbiage.
Yeah. Well, what as an active listener, what they say that we should be saying to them, if we don't, because what happens is if we don't understand truly, then there's nothing wrong with us asking for clarity.
Yes, for sure.
Right. So if you're talking to me and I'm truly actively listening, then there's nothing wrong with me saying, so what I'm hearing you say is, because
my husband picked that up.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is, because what I'm hearing you say may be different than what you meant to say. Remember? Because when a person's emptying their bucket and all of these emotions are flooding because they're just trying to get everything out, a lot of times those words are going to get jumbled.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times they'll say things that they didn't mean to say because they were just trying to express an idea. And, instead of us sitting there going, well, then you should have said what you meant to say. Well, that's not what I meant to say. It's a matter of getting them to really try to get to the root of what they were saying by saying. So what I'm hearing you say is, and then if it's not what they meant, that gives them an opportunity to kind of come back, right? And say, well, that's not really what I meant, but this is what I really meant.
Mm-hmm.
So, and along those lines,
Ah.
this is a tough one because you walk into that conversation, right? I can see Sister Audrey's kind of melting in her chair right now.
It's so funny to see
You
your
walk
reaction.
into that conversation with the mentality of replacing judgment with curiosity. That means that I am not going to sit there and listen and judge everything coming out of your mouth, already saying, well, you took that the wrong way. You're being too sensitive. That's not what you should have done. See, all these trigger words are firing right now. But in reality, that's what happens. And it's tough. I'm telling you, it's a tough skill. You have to be able to walk into a conversation by replacing judgment with curiosity, meaning I want to know as much as I can about what you're feeling, how you're feeling, and understanding it, right? So that's what judgment versus curiosity means, versus already evaluating the whole thing. And that's the mindset that we need to walk in with, which again, it's a skill, right? Maybe we come up with...
It's really like creating a space, right? I mean, there's so much effort involved in this. I mean, you want to minimize distraction, replace judgment, right? As we're discussing. So it's really trying to create this space where it's safe for them to feel that they can, empty that bucket for them to be able to discuss whatever it is that, that's up there, the topic for discussion, right? So that yes, a lot of effort, a labor of love for sure, to make sure that is that space.
Yeah.
Capital labor. Yes,
absolutely. And it's literally a matter of taking off that hat, right? Taking off that judgment hat and putting on the curiosity hat and letting them feel like, look, I want to know everything that's going on with you. I want to understand what's going on with you. And I want to understand why you're feeling that way. We may not necessarily have to say it, but it's certainly going to come across in how we engage them, right? The next thing is let them, we mentioned this, you got to let them completely empty that bucket. It's tough to do because we want so much in our hearts to help them, but we've got to give them the opportunity. We've got to allow them the opportunity to empty that bucket. And how do we do that? We've got to avoid interrupting or formulating a response before they've even finished, right? Meaning in our heads, judgment removed, curiosity in place. We want to understand and hear, which also means that we're not formulating responses already. It's like, it's not a debate. We're not sitting there trying to figure out who's going to come out ahead in terms of I was right, you were wrong, or, you were wrong in how you interpreted something. It's really about understanding, because truly through real deep listening, that's how we're going to be able to really understand and overcome a lot of the things that come up in a conversation that are misunderstood. And don't point out flaws in logic. We already said it.
Why did he look at me when he said that?
Yeah, I know. All the screens. Don't point out flaws in logic. It's so hard to do because again, we want to help them. In our minds, we're thinking we're helping them, right? We're helping them to be better people. We're helping them be better in how they handle problems. We're going to teach them resilience. You got to be stronger. Don't be so sensitive. Those are very tough things for a person who's trying to empty their bucket to have to hear. And it's going to cause them to just get frustrated and say, like, look, you're not listening to me, right? Because you're simply trying to formulate these responses to what I've not even finished telling you yet. So we want to make sure that we understand stuff is going to be said, and things that are going to be said sometimes aren't going to be what they meant to say. And that's okay. We need to let them finish, right? And to help them get finished, you want to use words like go on, right? Tell me more. We talked about it earlier that Another great expression is, so what I'm hearing you say is, so this way we can kind of get that affirmation from them to really better understand what they're trying to get across. It's tough. I mean, these skills are going to take practice.
Oh yeah.
It's and depending on the type of relationship that you have, whether it's professional, personal, with your spouse, developing these skills can be super awkward.
Mm-hmm. I do want to say it makes it easier when the person you're speaking with is someone that means a lot to you. And so it's easier to go through that, easier to be more empathetic. And speaking of people that are very dear to me and are very good listeners, I do want to shout out Brother Adrian Abelgus in the comments. He did say, curiosity makes conversations more interesting too. You find out so much about someone by letting someone talk and truly hearing them out. If you ever have a conversation with this man, he is brilliant. He's so good. And really great to just kind of let you navigate through your feelings and accomplish the goal of getting you to elevate your qualities as a person too. So keep those people in your life.
Kind of an undercover therapist, right? Is that
right? He
undercover
followed
therapist.
us all the way across the world, so that shows how dedicated of a person he is.
He didn't hear where you guys were going. He was really listening. Where you guys were going.
Well, and I think it's really a good point that you bring up, is that people who really mean a lot to you in your life are sometimes, and people you really care about are sometimes the people that you would be able to practice this skill on the most, because those are the relationships that you want to really preserve, the relationships that you really want to create deeper understanding with. And sometimes it just seems completely sort of ironic that those are the ones that sometimes you have the most difficulty with, because you just want to dive in there and fix things. You want to help them, you want to get them out of whatever rut they're in, and not realizing that sometimes they've just got to get through the process, just go through the process, be patient, and just let them, most importantly, feel, because that's the whole point. They've got to feel. It's part of being empathetic. They've got to feel like they've been heard, and they've got to feel like they've been understood. And that can't happen if we're constantly just barraging them with solutions and trying to fix them for them, right? So, I mean, there's just a long list of skills that we can really, make bullet points for. But the big takeaways are, we've got to understand listening's a skill. It's not something that we necessarily were born with. Maybe some people just developed it a lot quicker than others. But it's a skill that you've got to develop with intention, meaning it's something that you've got to really focus on, right? And then shifting from passive hearing to active listening. It's a big step, right? Passive hearing is just let the words come in. I'm not really processing anything because I'm too busy scrolling through my phone. But if you can shift to active listening and kind of elevate that conversation, then that's when you're going to start to see stronger relationships. You're going to have much better communication, and you're going to be able to really, really develop those connections that we've been talking about, right? With our families, friends, people that you work with, because I think it's important to understand that not every person is built the same way.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's looking at our roadmap of episodes. I think we've got one coming up, maybe I think in a month or so, where we're going to be talking about, the differences in people and their characteristics, and why dealing with people and interactions is something that is a constant skill that has to develop. Because if the goal is to build deeper connections with people in a relationship, that's something that means we've got to invest time and make effort in order to do that. Right. So, are there any shout outs there, Sister Audrey, in our chat that we want to call out?
Yeah, of course, we want to shout out all of the ministers' families and their wives in the chat who are always so diligent in supporting INCRadio Florida on the sunny side up of things. So shout out to Brother Lowell and Brother Carl, our district ministers, for joining us, as well as their respective wives. And then I want to shout out the April birthdays. We are in day 5 of April. So shout out to our number one fan, and Brother Adrian.
All
Happy
right.
birthday, as well as my mom, Alma Rosal, up there in
Oh, happy
Jacksonville.
birthday, Kalma.
Happy
Yes.
birthday, Mama.
Oh, I'm going to add on to that. I have a very special birthday too that happened yesterday. It was my brother, and he's over there in San Jose.
Oh,
So, Brother Mark, happy
Yeah.
Brother
birthday
Mark.
to you.
Yes.
Yes, and then my dad is on April 20th, so happy birthday to you. So April's full of fun birthdays. Look at that.
Good
I
people. Good
know.
Yeah,
people in
very good
April.
people.
I'm kind of wishing I was born in April. I don't know. I feel like I was a little cheated now. Well, this is a great opportunity, I think, for us to be able to have conversations that, as we talk about all the time, we want to build conversations that have deeper meaning, that help
Mhm.
to foster stronger relationships. And, it's these kinds of conversations. If you guys have gotten, any tips that you felt were really, really meaningful in today's episode, please throw them into the chat. We'd love to hear what you guys are hearing or hearing from us, right? And
Because
we
we're listening. That's right.
yes, and
We want to
to know
listen
that
to
you really are listening. But we'd also love to hear things that you want to hear more about, because again, we put this program together because we want all of the families, not only here in the Church of Christ, but more importantly, all of our listeners, to be able to foster deeper, more meaningful relationships that will help them grow in their families. But today we are going to be cutting the show short a little bit because it's a special anniversary episode of INCRadio Washington, D.C. They are celebrating their anniversary. I think it's their 11th year anniversary, maybe even more than that. So my apologies to our fellow INCRadio family there in Washington, D.C. But please have a wonderful show. Please stay tuned to catch their anniversary special. Stay tuned and join us next week on another episode of INCRadio Florida. But for now, this is Brother Robert DePaulis here in Tampa, Florida, for Sister Joy, who's there in Orlando, and also for Sister Audrey, who's here in Tampa, Florida. We wish you all a very happy Saturday, and please stay safe, stay blessed. We will see you next week